Good afternoon. My name is Steve Leach and I am the Head of Business Development for the North East Business Resilience Centre. I'd like to welcome you to the second in a series of webinars. Today is called Shining a Light on the Dark Web and is presented by David Johnson from Communicate PLC, who is one of the NEBRC trusted partners. During the webinar, if you have any questions to ask, if you just look for the question mark on the right hand side of the screen, drop something in the chat and we'll cover anything appropriate at the end, or if not, we'll email you separately afterwards. For those of you that are joining for the first time, the NEBRC is a not-for-profit company set up in collaboration between policing, academia and private sector businesses. Our purpose is to make cybersecurity affordable, manageable, understandable and practical for small businesses. Feel free to get in touch with us at any point and we'll do our best to help you. So without further ado, I will hand you over to our trusted partner, David from Communicate PLC. David, over to you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining the event this afternoon. If you have any questions at any stage, feel free to just drop them in the chat box, and we'll hopefully be able to answer them for you. If there's anything what's slightly outside of this, my contact details will be on some of the email content later, so feel free to get in touch. So hopefully. The agenda today, relatively small agenda today, so we should be able to dart through the majority of this in the next half an hour, and hopefully have some time for some questions at the end. So we'll start with what is the dark web. For those people not in the know, here's a little bit of a visual demonstration of the dark web and itself and the anatomy of the dark web. We're not really interested in the dark internet and the deep web at this stage today. The surface web is what we all see currently when we go to Google or whichever search engine that you use. But primarily the dark web currently is there to sell things. It's a bit like an eBay. That's the predominant dark web which the normal people would go about and see, and people like us will when we're investigating on the dark web would see. A little bit of a breakdown for those. So the three main elements of the layers of the web is the surface web, again, the accessible using your current browser, the deep web, which is a lot of sites traditionally which and don't appear on Google but do exist on the normal web, and finally the dark web, which requires the special software. So there's a lot of good and bad what goes on the dark web, which we'll go into a little bit, but here's a couple of examples. For example, medical records, subscription information, legal documents and some government documents would normally be classed as the deep web. And like I said, today we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the illegal shops, the private communications, the illegal activities and many other resources which go on the dark web. Surface web, hopefully everyone will be aware of, because I suspect most of them have used it. Most people have used it today. So for me, I'd like to explain a little bit about why the dark web for us is actually really interesting and really important for us. Like every attack vector, so I'm sure people have had the SMS messages recently around the Royal Mail text messages saying you've got a parcel and you need to pay £2, or it might be an email you've had saying we need your login details or whatever it may be. The dark web is actually just another vector that hackers use to gain access to our systems. And whether or not by our systems, I mean personally, when we're talking about your home email addresses, or at work, talking about the contents of your data or interesting information a hacker would want at work. And that's one of the things which we're really interested in, to understand what they're heading toward and what they're trying to do, so we can stay a step ahead of them, or at least not fall too far behind them. So one of my threat intelligence teams, just his statement was, understanding the deep web enables us to see where hackers focus and react accordingly. And that's very true. And we've seen actually illegal practices on the dark web change massively over the last few years, and information available on the dark web change. An antivirus these days is actually very, very popular and captures a lot of things hackers do. So things like the dark web is becoming more interesting to hackers because less often are they able to bypass the normal PCs in the normal way. So the positive side of the dark web, and this is really the bit I want to focus on, because we're a positive side of using the dark web. You know, we go on there, we find out what hackers are doing. So we're almost part of the hackers versus hackers. We'll see the type of activity the hackers are going to do. We'll also see the types of things that hackers are trying to sell. And sometimes where possible, we'll actually try and delete that data and remove it if they've uploaded some data which we can get a handle on and hopefully delete. And there's other hackers there who do the same. So a lot of companies and some of the other members of the NEBRC, I'm sure they've got threat intelligence teams which do the same. So we're actually combating a lot of the dark web. But whistleblowing is actually a real big part these days of the dark web, where we're seeing people able to go on the underground and discuss openly what governments are doing. Some of the regimes around the globe currently we're seeing a lot of chatter on there and trying to stay ahead of the real world and bypassing of censorship. So we know places like Russia, China, and there's various other countries blocking even the BBC News, and my work as well seem to block the BBC News. So I don't know if we're not classing it as a trusted source. And police catching bad people in there. So we see a lot of activity that criminals doing in interacting with law enforcement agencies around the globe. And there's actually websites set up which show what type of criminals are being caught every day by the police in the UK and across the globe. And then for us, yeah, we can see what's for sale and warn our clients. So if we see your passwords being put up for sale of your Windows password, or maybe it's your payroll password for accessing your Sage payroll account, we can tell you that. We can tell you that we've seen something. We can tell you the password, what's been stolen, and hopefully you can go and change that before hackers gain access. So it's again able to be more proactive than waiting for the hacker to access your account and hopefully being caught at that stage, or even worse, accessing your account and doing a load of criminal stuff before you finally gain access to it. So a little bit of information of the shops on the dark web. So if you imagine eBay, very much anything and almost anything you can buy on the dark web. You can buy cats, you can buy dogs, you can buy vaccines. The vaccines have actually gone down today in price. We've actually seen some vaccines at £65. So if anyone's waiting for a vaccine and you fancy breaking the law, then the dark web is the way to head. I'm not sure how much I trust a criminal sending me a little bottle of clear liquid through the post. But we see a lot of other things like passwords now as cheap as a penny per record for recent passwords stolen. HR and payroll systems record prices are going up, so we're seeing those style records, a HR system like it might be Brief HR Bright or whatever it may be, those passwords starting to raise in price because there's more value to them for the hackers. And then financial records, we're seeing that growing massively, so trying to get full Experian records for people or companies. And then identification, you can go on there and you can buy enough information to go out and get yourself a loan for about £15 on the dark web. Again, a lot of this data is sold by police, so it's going to catch a lot of criminals there, which is great. And payment card information. So for those who use a credit or a debit card, that information has gone up a lot in price, has gone down a lot in price because a lot of the banks are actually buying that data and driving the price of it down and cancelling cards much quicker. So I'm not sure how many of you there have had a debit card or a credit card just randomly cancelled by your bank and being sent a new one and told without any fraud hitting your account that something unusual has gone on. And I've had two recently, which, well, over the past couple of years, I say recently, which have happened, and they've cancelled my card, not really told me why, and then sent me a new card. So why should you care? Well, in reality, your business could be at risk, or your personal data and your personal money could be at risk. Now, this isn't about going out and buying a new shiny box or a new subscription or going out and changing the way you live every day. It's not really about that. It's just thinking about as you move forward with how you interact with the internet and trying to do it in a more secure manner. And to be fair, the actions you can take just from the information today will be a huge risk reduction and shouldn't cost you a penny to implement. And yes, it's going to be a little bit more of a pain, but I'm sure a lot of you have a gate on the front of your house or have an extra lock on your front door these days than you would have done. So security is becoming a little more complex for people, and people are taking extra steps. This is just about thinking of this as your real world, your front door and your house. You wouldn't want the cheapest door lock or leave your door unlocked, and that's what we're trying to get across here today. That the dark web is going to actually enable you to reduce the value of your data, what's going to leak, hopefully not, but could leak onto the dark web. So an interesting blog I wrote recently was around breaches and the amount we investigate, and actually 95% of the breaches we investigate wouldn't have happened if they'd implemented MFA or 2FA. Now, don't worry about that as a term. I know many of you will probably understand it and some of you won't. That's fine. We'll come to that later. But it's two-factor or multi-factor authentication. It's the bit where when you log onto your bank, it asks you for letter 2 or 6, or sends you a text message and asks you to plonk in a 6-digit password, or you may have an app on your phone where you've got to open the app, or you might have the little calculator like the Barclay card do where you've got to input some numbers, and that's the second factor. So that's what we're going to talk about. Credit cards, we've obviously covered this slightly, but card brands are now buying the majority of stolen card data, meaning that you can buy stolen credit card data for as low as 8p, which is phenomenal given years back, 10 years back, that data was going for £10–15 as a bare minimum, and now we can buy thousands and thousands of that on the dark web, duplicate cards, and people where we've been working with other organisations to get ahead of this and make sure cards are cancelled quicker, much more effectively. Because I don't know if anyone's ever been stuck when you've had a card cloned and you've been stuck in London or somewhere, or trying to get home and you've not been able to use the card. It's a painful process, and there's things that we can all do to reduce this risk. But for cybersecurity companies, our responsibility is to help people like Visa and MasterCard get hold of this stolen card data quicker, cancel the cards quicker, meaning that the criminals can't make any money out of us, and meaning that your money stays in your account, or your credit card stays with the zero balance we all hope for. And PayPal accounts, they're going up. So if you have a PayPal account, it's one to be cautious of. That seems to be a big target because it's generally linked to more than one card. It's pretty easy to gain access to a lot of these accounts these days. So if you do use PayPal, obviously that's migrated away from eBay, and it's worth just thinking about the security of that PayPal. Passwords. So the dark web itself, it has a lot of passwords on it, hundreds of millions, if not billions of passwords. And this is the area that we focus a lot on, trying to recover a lot of this data for people. So we look after a lot of directors who are worried that their wives, their daughters, their sons' accounts may have been compromised. And we will then provide them that information, or it might be their work email address, so that at communicateplc.com or what have you, provide them with any of the passwords what have been in there. And that's a real big growth area, because accessing someone's passwords is really, really easy to then gain access to those systems. And I know someone's just raised a question about, can you gain access to the dark web? And we will cover that just toward the end of the slide deck. So just bear with me, and we'll cover how you can gain access to the dark web. But to be fair, I don't think you'll need to after this call, and more will make sense. But yeah, we're seeing that actually a lot of these passwords are actually still active. So around 15% of passwords which we can buy off the dark web are still active and still usable. So multi-factor authentication, I think this is the really important part to get out of this. Actually, the dark web can become really unimportant to you guys, and actually much less important than it did when it panicked me a few years ago, when I saw quite a lot of my passwords on the dark web, as most personal email addresses tend to have. And this is the way that years ago I got over these issues. So 23 million accounts still use password 123456. Now, if the attendees jump off and people are changing the passwords, I will know. So I'll know that you're one of those, but hopefully you're not. But we still see a lot of people actually in businesses still using similar simple passwords. Password January 1, password January 2020, password January 2021. So this month we'd have password April 21, or it might be April 2021 exclamation mark. All these common ones, which we can actually guess pretty easy. And that's the bit where passwords are really important currently, but shouldn't really be that important. And we've seen people, the government bodies, people like the NEBRC, so, NCSC, actually saying, look, passwords shouldn't be that important, and we need to really think about protecting an extra stage on top of a password. So protecting your passwords. So in layman's terms, multi-factor authentication is adding in something you have, a username and email address, and your normal password, and then something you know or own. So this will be where your bank will say, okay, well, your mother's maiden name, or it might be the place of birth, or it might be the 4th and 5th character of your memorable word. It might be a text message, it might be an app like Google Authenticator. It's going to ask you for something else, and that is two-factor authentication, because it's asking you for something else on top of your password. Now, if my password leaks on the dark web at this stage, this example is going to ask me to authenticate on my phone. My phone's going to say, is this really you? Yes, it's really me. Can you are you accepting David's laptop to access this? Yes, I am. It's an unusual location, whatever, and you can yes or no, and that's two-factor authentication. This one takes it a step further and then is asking me to unlock my mobile phone to confirm that I'm really me, and then that's multi-factor authentication. The more factors that you use, the more complex it is, but the more secure that you are, and that's a real great one to look at. And so many websites these days will give you the ability to activate this free of charge. So it's one to take away, guys. Look through the common websites, which we'll go through in a couple of slides time, but you're going to reduce the likelihood of your account getting hacked by 99%. You're going to reduce the value of your password on the black market, because if you look at your Gmail password, if you're not using two-factor authentication, that username, which is your email address, your Gmail address normally, and your password is what they need access to gain access to your Gmail account. If everyone was forced into using this second factor, then it'd be really simple for us to say, well, that password is not that valuable to them. We'd still change it if it leaked on the dark web, but they still couldn't gain access with it because they'd need that second factor. They'd need to steal your mobile phone, or they may need to get access with your thumbprint or the swipe to gain access to your phone, open an application, or they maybe have to read a text message, etc. So the value of these passwords goes down, which means hackers will then start moving on to different things and making this really a null and void point. And that's what we all want to do. We don't want our passwords leaking on the internet. Someone asked the question if you can delete stuff off the internet, off the dark web. Yes, quite a lot of it you can, but a lot of it people keep copies of. We chase people around removing databases where we can, and the law enforcement agencies shut down various forums with illegal data. Don't worry about the data when it's out there. If it's out there, the likelihood of you removing it from there is very unlikely. It's not actually illegal to go on the dark web. I do want to stress that. What you do on the dark web is where you can be floating into illegal territory. There's a lot of bad stuff on the dark web, and floating around without any prior knowledge can be a really dangerous game. And I don't go on the dark web. I've got a team of people who specialise in it and have effectively pieces of kit which are almost burnable and removable after a couple of days use. So what you're effectively going to be doing with adding this multi-factor in is reducing the need for over complex and complicated passwords. I don't know about you, but I've worked at companies where you change your password every 30 days. It needs to be massively complex, 20 characters, 12 characters, 8 characters, whatever it may be, 14 special characters, 200 letters, small and higher case. It might be not allowed to be a dictionary name. It can't be something you've used in your last 4,000 passwords, and so on and so forth. And you get to a point where actually you're going to reduce your security because you're going to try and reuse that last password and change a character, change a digit in there, or whatever it may be. So this way, by using the second factor, you can reduce the amount of time you change your password and the amount of times you're going to actually change your password yourself. Bear with me a second, let's move on. So most popular sites that I think you guys and the people on this event should go off and have a look at is, if you've got any of these sites, then any of these applications, websites, etc., then these are the ones I would start looking at putting two-factor authentication on. It's free, it doesn't cost you anything, you don't have to buy anything from anybody, I don't have to get any of the sales guys ringing you up or anything like that. This is something that you can do by going to LinkedIn, doing a little bit of a search on Google, LinkedIn two-factor authentication, or Facebook. Password manager, if anyone uses an online password manager, having an extra step of authentication for that. Your Gmail, your Yahoo, most of your mail accounts will now offer it. Obviously your Amazon account, eBay, Microsoft account at work, and that's something your IT team, or if you're using an outsourced company, can do, then I would suggest you get some support from them to do that. And your payroll and HR systems, really important. They're a real common focus for hackers these days, and we're seeing them physically targeting these and trying to buy this data constantly to use, because accessing payroll payroll systems that can make payments, accessing HR systems that can get a lot of information about your staff. And there's a link down here just at the bottom, which will come out in the email, which is how to set up two-factor on a lot of these websites. But should be really simple to do. If you have a mobile phone, you can use Google Authenticator for most of these options, which is a little app. You will open the app and then you'll get basically a list of passwords which you can use for accessing the websites that you're wanting to access. So you'll go onto your app, it'll give you a 6-digit code, type it in, and you're in. So if someone steals this phone, then they've got to steal your phone or know you're signing. They've got to know what emails and what applications you're using. So it's an extra layer of security. It's not bulletproof, nothing is, but it's definitely going to reduce your risk a huge amount. So I want to move on to, I get asked this a lot by companies, and it's quite unusual working in cybersecurity because you can become quite a paranoid person. But I think it's worth putting things into perspective. You know, the dark web has probably got 90% of all the of passwords for all the people on this event, and you know, we'll have a look for you for free, and we'll help you understand what that is, help you change those passwords, and you know, move on to something which is more fit for purpose for you and pragmatic. You know, we don't want to make your life hell trying to get onto a system, but we do want to make sure you understand that in reality, you know, the dark web is full of so many passwords. The chances of them getting to your password really quickly is pretty unlikely. You know, I saw 13 million bits of passwords being uploaded 2 weeks ago. That's a lot of passwords just for .co.uk businesses. So a few common misconceptions for those people working in IT. Apologies, I'm not trying to sling you all in the same boat, and people working in cybersecurity the same. So it's okay, our IT provider looks after everything. Now that could be true, but the reality is your IT provider probably provides you IT and doesn't provide you cybersecurity, doesn't start going on the dark web and looking for your passwords, doesn't start telling you if there's new threats, doesn't start telling you that this a couple of days ago there was a new attack vector which you should be patching more quickly than you would normally do. But it's quite uncommon, so don't think just because you're outsourced to an IT provider that you're getting all these cybersecurity things which can go on in the background included in that. It's quite unlikely. It's okay, we're in the cloud, so we're secure. You're not. The cloud is effectively someone else's PC. A little more complex than that, but to put things into reality, it does come with the same risks. They're slightly reduced because you hosting a server in your office it is a little bit more of a risk, but in reality, it's the same risk. We pay cyber insurance to cover our costs. Well, cyber insurance doesn't actually cover future reputational damages. We know that, and it also sometimes doesn't cover fines which might come from Visa. If anyone takes payments, I don't want to ask and embarrass people on the Q&A section, but if you take card payments in one way or another, then you've probably signed a form which agrees to unlimited liability. So if 10,000 or 1,000 or 20 credit cards of your customers get stolen from you, and they spend £10,000 on each one of those credit cards, you are liable, and you're also liable to unlimited fines. And the ICO now can fine you up to the 20 million euros. Is it likely? Probably not, but they could do. So, and a lot of cyber insurance policies don't cover that, and it's worth reading the small print to think, actually, if I get hacked, it doesn't matter. It probably will, and it's likely to. And finally, our IT manager looks after our cybersecurity. It's normally IT are the people you shout at when something's not working, when you can't gain access to Facebook at lunchtime, or you can't gain access to the payroll website 10 minutes before the payments need to be run, or something's not working, you can't gain access to a folder. You generally don't shout at your IT manager when it doesn't look like you're the most secure company on earth. So you tend to find that in reality, IT veers more toward the availability element of the scale. So if you have a look here, you'll see there's a scale of availability over here on your left hand side, and on your right hand side security, and you'll find that you'll go from one toward the other. So that's the one to be mindful of. So an IT team, IT support company, a data center, AWS, Amazon Web Services, and Azure generally out of the box provide availability. Now they can provide security, but most people click the let's do this quickly, let's do this effectively, and deliver you availability. They don't really think about security. And then you get security retrofitted by a company like us, or your cybersecurity company you currently use, or a cybersecurity team you have in-house, or if you have a CISO, so a staff member managing it, or you're in contact with the NEBRC. They're just trying to drag you across that scale a little bit. And there's a little bit of exaggeration with the last slide. You can see it meets at the 0. So in this, you only have availability or security. It's not the reality of things. There's a balance, and there is an overlap. You can see sort of the overlap here, which I estimate is around the 40%. You can have reasonable security, you can have reasonable availability, and be and low risk of being hacked. And then you'll get company A, the retailer, who's just gone for availability and has thought very little about security. And these are real companies I picked out of recent clients that we'd been monitoring during incidents happening globally. And then company C, a company like ours, a cybersecurity company, is very much dragging around that you can't really do anything, you're into the cybersecurity terms. And for every client, and for you to take away, it's about thinking about what's more important for you guys and where do you need to be on that balance. And if you are managing a team, then it's worth thinking about, okay, am I paying someone to just get me more available, or am I paying people to get security? Because security by design is way more effective and way more cost effective, and gives you a way better return on investment over retrofitting security. And 99% of the job we do in our security operations centre behind is helping people with retrofitting security. Very few think about it up front. So one bit I want to focus on here is the 30-day password changes. It doesn't actually increase your availability. It doesn't actually make you more secure anymore. And it doesn't really help reduce the risk. So it's one to be cautious on that. In reality, if you've got password changes every 30 days, implementing multi-factor authentication and increasing password complexity, but the number of times that you change it is going to be way more effective from you. The other things, patching, updating, if people are telling you it can wreck my availability, that's not true anymore. Things are improving. I'll send this out, but I won't go through it in too much detail. It's a lot of text to read out, but my hackers don't really rely on the dark web. They use companies to provide the information about the dark web, so passwords. But the gentleman I spoke to on this said between 10 to 20% of the passwords he finds on the dark web still work when he does an ethical hack. So it's worth thinking that if you've got 5 passwords on there, statistically speaking, there's probably one that still works. So it's being mindful that the passwords are still valuable on the dark web, but we're hoping to reduce that by getting more people to do things on here. For those who asked if we can go on the dark web, of course you can. If you send me an email, I'll send you some instructions on how to do it safely. Be cautious, be careful. You can do it in a safer way, but the types of sites you visit determines when you go from legal access to the dark web to illegal access. But feel free, if you've got an old laptop that you no longer need, and you can follow the instructions we send. I'll send you some instructions on how to do it, and that should give you a real good first person view of what goes on the dark web. But if you can avoid it, please do. We can tell you what's on the dark web for you. So a couple of things what have changed recently is, have I been pawned? If you've not seen this website, it's worth going to. It shows a lot of breaches for personal emails, not so much for business emails, but it'll tell you whether or not your personal email's been hacked and been shared in a breach, and hopefully where, and enable you to change the password. We noticed Facebook was recently leaked some further data, so that's one to be aware of. Your credit reference agency, people like Experian, Equifax, they give away a lot of data to customers for free. They can tell you if any of your dark web details have been compromised. People like the NABRC, go to them. They can put you in touch with one of their trusted partners. And also your cybersecurity insurance. Don't rule that out, because I think you'll find that actually there's a lot of information they can give you for free. You're paying them to cover you. They actually want to reduce the risk. If all else fails, your IT provider, and then from that your local cybersecurity provider. Alternatively, we'll run a scan for you, tell you if there's any data on there, what data's on there. We'll do your personal email address. You just have to send me an email, and we can do your business, your whole business, and tell you what users were affected, what passwords were used, and hopefully what them passwords are linking to. Is it a Windows password? Is it Facebook? Is it LinkedIn, etc., etc. We'll skip the news this week. It's a couple of weeks old now. I was hoping for something a bit more exciting, but we've seen 11 million Facebook IDs with the memorable information, birthdays and email addresses. That information is on the Have I Been Pawned website. So again, have a look at this email when it comes out. Just have a look at that website, check your personal email. That's the most important at this stage first, and it's one to be wary of that. That's likely going to be, if there's a lot of information about you, it's going to give you some, going to tell you where that information is. But just be aware that they're likely going to target you with phishing attacks if they get this information. So finally, all attendees receive a free dark web report. So thank you for coming on, and I appreciate you listening to me ramble on for a while. If you are interested, just grab my email address off the email, which will come out in the next couple of days. Drop us an email from your company, so whichever domain you want us to check. Let us know who you are. We'll send you a text message with the password and the data that we can find as a one-off, and it's a zero charge. We cover the cost for that in partnership with the NEBRC, and all the details will be in there. So I think if you have any questions, drop them in the box. Looks like we've answered most of them. So yeah, really appreciate your time. Thank you. Steve, do you have any closing words before we close it off? Looks like maybe not. So yeah, I'd like to thank everyone for coming on. Keep an eye out for the email. If you need any support, any help, then obviously the NEBRC are here to help, and they should be your first port of call as always, and they'll direct you to the right people. Looks like Steve maybe may want to say something, I'm not sure, but yeah, everyone's got the contact details for the NEBRC. They'll be in touch. If you're ever unsure about anything cybersecurity related, pick up the phone. You know, I learn every day. This is something what evolves every day. There's no stupid questions. It's just worth picking up the phone to people like the NEBRC, picking up the phone to us, having a chat, and just getting more of an understanding of it. The more you understand it, the more you understand the risks, the less likely you are to make the wrong decisions and end up being one of those guys who we're coming out and investigating. So thank you, everyone. I'll hand.
All right, that's the end of the webinar. Just a big thanks from David. I think it was really informative. I'd echo what he said, particularly about have I been pwned. There's a website to check your details. But yeah, we'll do a follow-up email. You get David's contact details, and I encourage you to take him up on the offer of the check of what's out there on the dark web, and then we can sort of look at how to mitigate any information that is out there. Again, reiterating what David said, the two-factor, the password, all that is real good, simple advice. Start to think of this as sort of day-to-day business for your company. No, don't think of it just as cyber security. When I've spoken to some of you before, this should just be crime prevention. This is theft and damage, if you like. So we'll look at it in those terms. But yeah, just a big thanks from us for David's attendance and yours. And hope you have a pleasant afternoon. And we'll catch you at the next webinar. Thank you.